Hi, my name is Terry Bivona, and this is video clip 4 in this series that I'm calling A Life Worth Living. I'm 52 years old, and about 6 weeks ago I'd been a 12-year veteran of being a hospice nurse, and 6 weeks ago I had severe pain in my back. I actually thought I had a slip disc, and the emergency room staff thought so also. Quite abruptly, turns out that I have stage 4 bone and prostate cancer to such a huge extent that I actually have a 3 to 6 month prognosis of life here on earth, and I've moved from being a hospice nurse to a hospice patient. So I want to take this opportunity in these video clips and share some of the most amazing stories that I've had in my life of patients and their families that have affected me in significant ways, of different insights or different ways of viewing reality that have really opened up my view of what things can be, and usually ends up a different perspective of love. So again, this is video clip 4, and it's called The Atheist. Story goes that there was a man. He had profound lung cancer. His frame was usually around 180, 190 pounds. When he came onto hospice care, he was down to about 130. I knocked on his door, and he greeted me with his long 30 or 40 foot tubing of oxygen, invited me into his house. Obviously a well-read academic fellow, based on the things that I saw in his home, a very courteous man. And so we started talking about his disease process and how he ended up at the stage that he's at, how he's coping with that. And just to give you a broad view of who he was, most people use language like Christ-like behavior, or the compassionate Buddha or Buddha-like behavior in those two main religions, is really talking about having a high sense of morals, a high sense of ethics, and usually a high sense of altruism as kind of the hallmarks of someone who's in service to God or service to life. And two examples of how this man did that. One, he was just really highly responsible for his relationship with his wife, really instrumental in helping his children's life advance into professionalism. That these other two things happened, which were just so far above the mark of anything I normally hear in people. This one family, their house burnt down, and unhesitatingly, this man brought them $700. It just was the right thing to do. They were in need. He had the ability to do that, and he just did that. And another example that he gave, kind of with a little bit of coaxing, was there was an apartment building that I think several units had burnt down, and because of the fire damage, but also because of the water damage, these people had lost a lot of things in their homes. And again, unhesitatingly, this man put in $400 to help these families get food and shelter as things were in transition for them. $1,000 is a lot of money, $1,100. But even watching this man tell these stories, he told them a little bit guardedly, but he was also demonstrating he has a sense of his community is his family, including his family. And these were really amazing things on how he just kind of balanced spiritually and economically. These are the right things to do. So as I was doing the hospice admission paperwork about his medical history, his personal history, his family dynamics, one of the things that's on those sheets of paper is religious preference. And I asked him, and he said, "I'm an atheist." And I nodded, and I also knew I didn't know what he meant by that. So I said, "Oh, cool, what's that mean for you?" And he said this. He said, "Well, I've never myself or any friends or family of mine have died and gone somewhere other than Earth and come back and report to me, 'Hey, Joe, this is real. It's real. The heavens are real. The God worlds are real. So I'm telling you, I'll see you later, but it's the real deal.'" And so he literally told me, he said, because those are not experiences of mine, he says, I put him in the category of myth. And I put him in the category of myth, M-Y-T-H, for anything that is theoretical or hopeful or wishful, because they're not based on real experiences. They're kind of based on wanting or on possibility. And he said, until it comes to the category of experience to me, then all things that are defined that way are in the category of myth. And he says, so when I say agnostic or any language along that way, or atheist, I'm really saying that I don't have experience with that. And he said, I think it would be false for me to claim that I am whatever spiritual thing if I don't have experience with it. He says, belief to me is not enough. I really want that experience. So this man really kind of set me up in a very different direction, because I consider myself quite spiritual. And he helped me start to really delineate and differentiate how much of my own reality that I was claiming to be religion or spiritual experience was actually in the same category that he was talking about, that it actually is in me. That same category of myth that's actually just based on thought and hope and speculation. And he helped me kind of find that range of experience, which compared to some people's a lot, but he helped me define this field of experience differently, as being much more profound than hope or faith. And it really opened my view to really want to have more spiritual experience. So as it goes, he did become more ill. The cancer, as it often does, really does a lot of body wasting with the people's bodies. And his cancer moved along expediently enough that it ended up he got metastasis, or cancer advanced into his brain also. So he became very apprehensive, really hard to control his calmness. He would wake up in the day, afternoon, or evening, 2 in the morning, just panicking, and this huge surging need to go do something. He wanted to drive the car or go get a cheeseburger, just something. And he almost didn't have an agenda. He just needed to go. And it was really, really an intense thing. And his bedroom, for better and for worse, was upstairs by the stairs, right at the entry of it. And it made it really scary for his wife, who was his primary caregiver. And I worked on the weekends, so on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, literally for 3 weekends in a row, I could always count on a call from her to just talk through which medicines to use, how he had been for the past few hours, and kind of which medicine or combinations and how much, based on the doctor's orders, kind of in that framework that we could use for him to try to help him feel calm and safe. So this one Friday night, that all happened kind of according to the rhythm of things. And then this one Saturday night, there was no call. Not at 10, not at midnight, and it got all the way to 7 a.m. I woke up in the morning and no calls. I'm like, So I called his wife, and I said, how's it going? She says, it's been an interesting night. I'll tell you when you get here. Which I didn't have. I didn't have it planned to go there, so she was telling me, you need to come here. I'm like, all right. So about 30 minutes later, I showed up at their house, and I knocked on the door, and she sticks her head around the door, and she's got a half grin and half kind of straight look on her face, and that didn't help. It wasn't clear. And I came in, and she just looked at me, and I looked at her like, with my hands up, like, what? She says, well, it was a very interesting night. I was like, okay. And I still didn't know what that meant. Did he die? And she just had the funeral home come? I have no idea. And she was setting me up because she was just suspending the whole thing for me. She says, well, the usual things happen. She says he kept getting up every 2 or 3 hours and just kind of combining the medicines, and he'd go back down for 2 or 3 hours again. She says, but about 2:30 in the morning, he sat straight up in the bed. She said, I was so tired, and he's pushing on my shoulder, going, honey, honey. So she says, I'm trying to wake up, and he keeps going, honey, honey, did you see it? And she goes, see what, Joe? Did you see the white light? Did you see the white light? I was riding on the white light. Honey, do you want to ride on the white light with me? And her translation was that meant dying. And she says, not quite yet, Joe, not quite yet. It's a little chuckle there. And then what she proceeded to tell me was the most fascinating part of all. She said, from that moment, he completely changed. She said he calmed down. She says, I've given him like 1/4 of the medicines that we'd been giving him since, he came on service and has had a really hard time. And she said he is totally at peace. He's calmer, and everything just looks much more accepting. And he was sleeping when I was there, and he was actually sleeping enough. I was able to check his pulse and his respirations. And his demeanor really did look serene also. He looked like a different person. So he actually died 3 days later. It's interesting, a lot of people in my hospice experiences, once they kind of hit a point of knowing something, and they make a transition from either faith to knowing, or they make a transition from fear to knowing, they become very, very different, and their response to the world is much more peaceful. But a lot of times there's about a 3-day window that they'll die within those 3 days, and kind of at about 2 or 3 days. So that's what happened with Joe. He did die 3 days later, but from that point on of seeing and riding on that white light, he had an experience. He had a spiritual experience that translated to him of a knowing and of a continuity between this world and wherever he was going, that he was able to experience that continuity as that white light. Enough that he wanted to invite his wife to ride along. She was really funny because she knew that that meant that this was his ticket to the heavens, and she really didn't want to quite go there yet. Love him though she may. Just really wanted to take a little more time here on the Earth planet with her kids and all that. So it's very, very sweet. The profound part for me was, again, in the beginning of him defining so clearly the difference between myth and experience, and how significantly and how clearly and calmly he was delineating those two things. This man wanted to have experience. And I think that's why it was so clearly delineated by his language. He wanted the experience, but he needed to be really clear that he wasn't just doing wishful thinking and calling that reality. He wanted to have the reality of the experience more than the thought that it might be true. And the other was him riding this white light, that so many of the religious things that I've read over the centuries, white light and an internal experience usually is translated as love, some kind of divine love or some type of connection to the divine. So a beautiful story. He really taught me, and with the hospice team when I gave this report the next day and after his death, to really be cautious about how we interpret somebody else's use of words. To say atheist often, and I've done introductory end-of-life classes with over 1,000 healthcare professionals, most of those people will concede if they hear the word atheist and they're a religiously based clinician, there's a sense of empathy or sadness or loss, like those people are missing out by saying they're atheist or agnostic. And this man certainly showed me he moved towards divine reality in his own way, in a very pure and honest intent, and he ended up with an incredibly beautiful gift for himself, for his wife and children, and for all of us in hospice care. So thank you.